Hello, Ramley and other family. We're so excited. Today we have a very special guest coming on the show to talk about some Rams and everything going on. We had a great interview with Rams House a couple days ago, and today we are going to welcome in another Rams YouTuber who we're about to meet. But before that, roll intro. Yes, so Jake Ellenbogen is in the house, and thank you so much, Jake, for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Payo. I'm a big fan of yours. I think you're a great dude, and it's been fun getting to know you a little bit, throughout doing the live streams and what have you. I've been in a few of yours. You've been in a lot of mine, so it's great to come on, man.
Absolutely. And Jake, I want to start off by saying, from myself and many other Rams fans, thank you for the hard work you do.
I appreciate that.
I know that you put a lot of effort into your content, and especially I want to, you and the entire Downtown Rams team, your draft coverage, that was an amazing experience to be a Rams fan and actually have like Rams-centric draft coverage for the first time in my life. Like, I don't know if anyone else has ever done that, but you guys did a phenomenal job, and I'm a big fan of what you guys do. So thank you for all that hard work.
Oh, Payo, I really appreciate that. You're making me blush over here. But no, in all honesty, I know what it was like, when I was younger and the Rams were in St. Louis. I just tried every little bit to find any details I could about my favorite team. I have many favorite teams. I have a favorite team in baseball, basketball, what have you. But the Rams have always been my absolute favorite. I don't get the same amount of joy watching any other, sports team. So I know exactly what you mean by that. When they were in St. Louis, there'd be, the Cardinals and, the Blues, and they talk about them on, those certain radio stations. And I was just like, man, we need somebody to cover this in detail. And I think, there have been people that step up to the plate. I got to give a shout out to Jordan Rodrigue of The Athletic. I've gotten to know her. She's a friend of our show. She's great. She's honestly the best beat writer I think I've ever seen. She's just phenomenal. We'll be lucky to have her as long as we have her, because I think she's going to go national, and she's going to be able to do that because she just got an award. Shout out to Joe Curley of the Ventura County Star. He's been somewhat of a mentor to me. A lot of people don't realize, because there's been a lot of people that joined in on the Downtown Rams podcast after I took Alexis Kraft on board. But initially it was Blaine Grisak, who is going to be on my show later on. Shameless plug there. Love Blaine. And a lot of people don't realize this, but he's the mastermind right now behind downtownrams.com. I have moved away, in a sense, away from writing. It's not my passion the way it is going on, just press and record and just going on camera. This is what I love to do, and I love podcasting. So I don't do as many articles. Blaine has really held that down. And we're expanding to fantasy football, and we're expanding to the NFL draft even more. So you'll actually have more NFL draft content throughout the year. You'll have more of an idea of prospects, maybe guys in the past that we might have hit on in January, and you might have thought that was early. We might be able to get to them in September, October, November. So you're at the water cooler at work, and you sound like an expert. So that's our goal. We're really just trying to, provide the best that we can. Another shout out I'll throw out is Nick Hamilton of Nightcast Media. He's another one of my mentors, to be honest with you. Excellent person. He's been huge for me. I'm actually writing over at Nightcast Media for the MCU. That's a little bit of what I'm doing, but for the most part, I'm pretty much away from writing. So those are just some shout outs. I really do appreciate, your hospitality, first off, having me on. Secondly, supporting me, and thirdly, supporting my crew. And I really do appreciate that.
Absolutely. No. I think that we have an exciting beginning of Rams creators going on right now. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for you and for the Downtown Rams crew, for sure. But speaking of shout outs, we're going to give a couple of shout outs here. Guys, I'm not going to go through the comments today, but I do want to give some shout outs to Darth and Jay. And we got L. First, I have never seen you in the chat before, but welcome.
Oh, that's the man right there. L Pineapples.
Oh, awesome. L Pineapples. That's awesome. We got Jared's always tuning into the streams. Thank you. Jay is a Niners fan in here. That's okay. We welcome everyone. Ramlia Sports Report, welcome. Really excited to see you get your channel up and running. And David, thank you. Oh, from the UK. That is awesome. He's saying he's been a Rams fan since the Eric Dickerson days. Awesome. Thank you for your fandom. And yeah, we got Looter Chris is in here. We got an elite chat today. So excited for everyone to tune in. But Jake, I want to talk about something. So
yeah,
you might have heard Cam Akers is out for the year. And you had a fantastic video about let's calm down. Henderson is here. And I appreciated that. I'm a huge Darrell Henderson fan myself.
My guy.
Ever since we drafted him, I'm like, he had such an underrated college career. But I want to ask you, and comfort the Ramley, Jake, is because we've heard reports like Eric Dickerson's like sign Todd Gurley, and we've heard trade for Kareem Hunt, and we've heard sign Adrian Peterson. We see all this. And there's a legitimate concern about how Gerald Henderson is the only running back with the Rams who has actually taken an NFL snap before. So that's a legitimate concern. But can you comfort the Ramley a bit? What are your thoughts, towards any of these, or should the Rams just stay put? Let's wait for training camp.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would, first off, I think I'm going to make a video later on about it, but for people saying that Todd Gurley makes absolutely no sense for the Rams, I got to disagree. Like you said, and you pointed out, great point, by the way, because I haven't really heard anyone say it, even though it's right out there in the open, just take it. There's only one guy in the running back room that has taken snaps in an NFL game, and that is Darrell Henderson. Now, I like guys like Otis Anderson. Mm-hmm. I like guys like Xavier Jones. I think Xavier Jones, if you gave him the carries, he could go over 1,000 yards. As crazy as that sounds, I think the Rams' offensive line's underrated. They're top 15 at the very worst. They're going to be top 10, I think, this year. But when you look at them, you look at a guy like Jake Funk. I had a 6th round grade on him. I'm not as high on him as some other people. Like, they're already saying that this guy can start. I don't think that, but I did have a 6th round grade on him. They got him the 7th, so they actually got him higher or lower, rather, better value than what I had. But look, the fact of the matter is this, Darrell Henderson can be the guy. Darrell Henderson can be a top 12 fantasy running back this year. Realistically, his ceiling to me, and if you're playing fantasy, is running back 6. I think he's really in for an explosive season. I don't just make videos for clickbait. When people ask me, do you really expect him to explode? I do. And I don't think it's crazy to think that. I mean, this is a guy that averaged over 8 yards per carry in Memphis. I talked to his running back coach, Anthony Jones Jr. on the Downtown Rams podcast a few years ago. He had nothing but great things to say about him. In case you didn't notice, he's got a running back factory going on in Memphis. I mean, you look at guys like, of course, Antonio Gibson, Tony Pollard. I mean, they've really been churning guys out. Darrell Henderson's no different. And so to me, when people say, well, this guy, he gets banged up a lot and what have you, Cam Akers got more banged up than he did, first off. Secondly, there's also this notion, this preconceived notion, just looking at a smaller running back. Look, the guy, let's be honest here. If you've been following the Rams back to St. Louis, he should remind you a little bit of a former Ram, Trey Mason. I mean, he has a very similar build. He's got the home run hitting ability. And I understand why people want to run for the hills when they see that, because they think, one, the Trey Mason saga in St. Louis didn't end well. Actually went to LA and it didn't end well. And two, they look at the fact he isn't all that built, so he can't withstand the punishment. But I just disagree with that, because when you look at Henderson, he had more broken tackles of any running back on the roster last year. That includes Cam Akers and Malcolm Brown, who are way more built than Henderson, so to speak. But furthermore, he had one more missed tackle that he generated than Cam Akers, and they were in the 20s. So this is somebody that is elusive, I don't think he's given enough credit for what he does. But furthermore, and this is a big one, PFF, and I'm not saying PFF is the Bible, but this is something. He was the number 1 rated running back through week 8 of the NFL season by PFF. That keep in mind, that includes receiving, that includes carrying the football, and that includes, of course, the other element, which is so huge that will keep you on a field or take you off it, pass protecting. And he is a phenomenal pass protector for what he is. I mean, you don't look at him and think that guy can pass protect, but he can. And that's what's going to keep him on the field. That's why I do have him as a 3-down running back. And furthermore, in the receiving game, people talk about his lack of receiving at Memphis. Well, when you look at Memphis, they had Kenneth Gainwell. You know, obviously that's another guy I forgot to mention earlier, 5th-round pick for the Philadelphia Eagles, total steal. They had Antonio Gibson. You know, they had these guys. And they had Tony Pollard. So, yeah, he wasn't utilized in the passing game because they literally used Tony Pollard and Antonio Gibson for that said role. But the interesting thing here with Darrell Henderson is that he showed you last year that he can do it. Jared Goff just couldn't get him the football. I mean, we saw it. He overthrew him on numerous occasions. Now he's got Matthew Stafford. You know, Stafford's going to use him. And regardless, Darrell Henderson doesn't have to carry the workload of like an Ezekiel Elliott the year he had like 400 touches. That's what's being misinterpreted by people. Look at what he did against Buffalo. He did that in like 18 carries, maybe 22 total touches on the game. And he had 100-something yards in that game and a touchdown. He was amazing in that game. Then you look at the 49er game. Okay. Then you look at the Seattle game at the end of the year down the stretch. I mean, he looked great, but then he gets the ankle injury and everyone wants to call him injury prone. Got news for you. I don't care what running back in the NFL gets that ankle. They're getting hurt. And you know, that's the fact. So I just look at Henderson. There's a lot going for him here. There's a lot of momentum. This is the perfect time for him to break out because people are already calling for Jake Funk to take over him. People are already calling for Le'Veon Bell, who has proven really he hasn't been the same since he left Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. And furthermore, people are calling on Devontae Freeman, who, I mean, I would take anybody on the roster over Devontae Freeman. So if you want to look at any running back that could come in, to me, it's Todd Gurley and it's Adrian Peterson. And I wouldn't really make a trade outside because you don't have a ton of picks. You gave up a lot of picks for Stafford, so you need to keep that in mind. But if you're going to trade for anyone, maybe a Sony Michel for a late round pick. Kareem Hunt is not available by any stretch. The Browns have something there with him and Chubb that nobody in the league has that teams are trying to replicate. So they're not going to trade him. I've heard people mention Mostert. That's also not happening. Intra-division trades are very rare. So I look at it and I'm thinking Todd Gurley and Adrian Peterson are the best bets. First off, Adrian Peterson still has it. The film shows it. He could still run for 1,000 yards if need be. If you gave him the carries, he could still do it. But Todd Gurley is the most interesting one here. Not only is Eric Dickerson on board, I'm 100% on board to bring back Todd Gurley. First off, let's look at it, okay? Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson both had more rushing yards and rushing touchdowns than anybody on the roster last year. And I know everybody basically split carries, but the fact of the matter is this. These guys are still getting in the end zone. Todd Gurley had 9 touchdowns last year. Todd Gurley the year before with the Rams had 12? I mean, he is a touchdown monster. That doesn't hurt you. And so, recently Bleacher Report has, a alert come up on my phone, and it's like this report where, the Rams don't view Todd Gurley as a starter anymore. And everyone's like losing their mind. I'm like, that's fine, because Todd Gurley has a perfect scenario here where if he can forgive the Rams, and I'm saying 100% he should, because there was a lot that went down there, but if he can, now Todd Gurley can go back home. He can go back to where it's comfortable for him, the offense. And on top of that, he can basically be there with Henderson. He could be in an offense that's similar. He can be there with a very good quarterback in Matthew Stafford, a great defense, and a new and improved offense that has guys like Tutu Atwell, Deshaun Jackson, and Van Jefferson. And we'll even see potentially Jacob Harris stretching the field, adding another wrinkle to the offense, another dynamic, which opens up the run game even more. So it's easier on Henderson, but it's easier on Gurley because you can really manage Gurley's workload while also still giving him, some carries. And when people are like, absolutely no Todd Gurley, he wouldn't cost that much, one. And two, you're not signing him to be the number one back. You're signing him to be another guy there. Essentially, you're signing him because while you may like Xavier Jones a ton, and I am right there with you. I mean, Xavier Jones had 20 rushing touchdowns or 20 plus rushing touchdowns his last season with SMU and would have been a fourth or fifth round pick in the draft had there not been COVID holding everyone back from actually working in the pre-draft process, which was unprecedented. So yeah, I like him, but keep this in mind. Sean McVay coached the team that had to go out and get CJ Anderson off their couch because they had a similar situation where they had a 6th round. Yeah, I mean, you're hearing this right now. Doesn't this sound like where they're at right now? 6th round pick in John Kelly. And they had a UDFA who they really liked in Justin Davis. And where did that go? It went nowhere. It went so nowhere that they literally brought in CJ Anderson. So I think there's still part of that still in Sean McVay's head that could, problems could arise. So they're going to play this slowly. And the last thing you would want if you're going to sign a Todd Gurley or Adrian Peterson, a guy that's, 36 years old or a guy that has potentially 36-year-old knees, here's the thing. You don't want to sign them right now. You want to wait until the end of training camp when you finally realize, wow, we need a guy, because this is the fact of the matter is this. I don't want Todd Gurley getting hurt in training camp. I don't want to have to, basically teach him all the nuance of the offense and everything and have him get hurt. I'm totally fine with them signing him before the season starts, grooming him back into what they do, and just rolling with the guys they have, keeping them on the roster. Maybe it knocks off a Raymond Calais or an Otis Anderson or even Jake Funk, because we've seen talented guys get knocked off and on in the practice squad. Even if that happens, I'm okay with it. But people saying that like they want him to be the starter, like nobody's replacing Henderson as the starter. It's either going to be a timeshare, a running back by committee approach, or there's not going to be anybody there, and it's going to be Henderson being the guy. But on top of that, they don't have to run it 400 times because their offense is going to be explosive in the passing attack. And I really do believe that. So I know that's a lot there, but those are my thoughts essentially on what's going on in that room. Why I do believe Todd Gurley is probably the best scenario here, because they don't need to go out and get a guy that's like a top-notch running back. They need a guy that has familiarity, which Peterson has familiarity with Stafford. That's definitely fair. But they need a guy that can also pass protect. Gurley can do that. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He just doesn't have the explosiveness anymore. But he also was 3rd in the league in rushing before he got benched.
Oh, Jake, preach it. I love it. No, and I very much agree with you. There's no point to signing. If you are going to sign a veteran running back, Todd Gurley or Adrian Peterson or anyone, there's no point doing it right now. Wait till you're, in training camp and you're scouting your young guys that you've said you believe in. McVay has said he likes what he sees in his young running back room. So find out in your own camp if you're comfortable going into the season with that. If not, okay, that's when you would sign a veteran to it. Yeah, no, I very much agree with that. And it's going to be juicy. I can't wait till training camp actually starts so we can have like stuff to talk about other than just speculation.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And, I think that linebacker room is definitely something to keep in mind, because while, there are people like me that believe, Ernest Jones is going to get his opportunity as a rookie starter next to Traven Howard, there are also people that aren't like me and that do have other opinions, like a Micah Kaiser and Kenny Young or something like that.
I'm a big Kenny Young guy. I think he's going to have a big year.
You like Kenny Young?
I do, yeah.
All right, so I hate to say this, but I actually just filed my depth chart for the SI guide that we're coming out with. I did a prospect guide. I covered the Rams. There's 22 prospect reviews and everything. So I'll let you know when that drops. But I actually did not have him making the roster.
Yeah, I've had other Ram fans say that to me, but I look at like. He's had some big plays. He's not necessarily the linebacker that's been most consistent, but people forget that we traded for him, right?
Yeah.
He was from the Ravens in that Marcus Peters trade. And I every year that since then, I feel like Kenny Young has just been on the cusp of breaking out into a consistent player because you see it in spurts. You see it in spurts. So I'm a believer in Kenny Young. I wish him all the best. But no, I can totally have that conversation that some people might think he's ready. The Rams are ready to move on from him as well.
Watch out for Gervais. I'm telling you right now,
Yeah.
that's my guy.
Well, yeah. Okay. All right. I like it. Well, Jake, I feel like we could talk about stuff going on right now, but I really wanted to do this series, Rams fans talking Rams. And so I had Rams House on a couple days ago. I have you on today. I have Rams Showcase coming on Sunday. Reaching out to a couple other Rams YouTubers to do this series. And I have a couple of questions that I want to ask you and let the Ramley know, get to know you a little bit. And so we have three kind of segments here. It's Rams past, Rams present, and Rams future. And so the first question is, can you tell me from the Rams past, one of your favorite Rams players who's currently not on the team, a Rams favorite play, a specific play, and a Rams favorite game?
Ooh, okay. So let's see. We'll start with my favorite player. I'm gonna cheat here and go 1A, 1B. It's Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely love them. I think if I had to go with somebody way in history, I'd say Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch. He actually has a movie that you can find still on YouTube. It's a black and white movie. It's like way beyond like the time, right? Just they had never done anything like that. So I love it. I think it's really cool. It's a little cheesy, but it's so cool to look back on that. And it's right around the time they won the championship in the 50s. So I love him. But I would say those two are my favorite that I've seen. Favorite play? I mean, everyone would probably just go with the tackle.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be a little creative here and go with a play that I saw live. I'm going to go with, I'll never forget it. So Jared Goff is in the shotgun on a 3rd and 33 against the New York Giants. It is pouring rain. It is cold. We heard all week Jared Goff cannot play in the pouring rain. His hand size, whatever. 51-17 says otherwise. Anyway, so 3rd and 33, and McVay goes with one of those bubble screens that we all like to scream at our TV about. Well, this one is different because it went to Robert Woods, who basically took a 3rd and 33 from behind the 50-yard line all the way to the house. And I was sitting in the end zone, so I got to see it like he was running at us. Just a really cool experience. I was there with Blaine, as well as my father and my brother. So just a really cool moment. I think that was my favorite play because I just had a feeling they were going to score, even though it was 3rd and 33, and they did. So it was incredible. And then I would say, what was the last question?
Well, just for the record, that is the only time the 3rd and long bubble scream has ever worked.
All I can remember.
Sean McVay. Every time I see it, I yell. Oh man.
It was the game, right?
Yeah,
favorite game.
Yeah.
So I want to say that, but that's kind of lame, right? I just gave that game a shout out. It was really cool meeting a bunch of Rams afterwards. It was a great game. The Packers game I was at was great. The Saints game I've been into a lot of great games, but one that stands out to me was when I was watching on TV. I'll never forget as long as I live. 54-51. Rams Chiefs. It's the greatest regular season football game of all time. No one can tell me otherwise. For people that said there wasn't enough defense, it's one of the weirdest games ever because while it was 54-51, I felt like the defense played well on both sides. They made turnovers. It was weird because it was like, they were just two Goliaths going at it. I mean, Jared Goff was going toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they lost Todd Gurley so early in that game, and I'm pretty sure that was right after they lost Kareem Hunt on the Chiefs. I could be wrong. He might have played that, but he wasn't as much of a factor. And I just remember, not having, I don't believe Cooper Kupp was there. You had Josh Reynolds. You had Gerald Everett, Samson Ipugam all step up. It was just a incredible game. Aaron Donald really making the staple there that he was the best player in the league. He went toe-to-toe with a guy that a lot of people thought was the best in Patrick Mahomes. And he said, you're not quite there, buddy. And Aaron Donald ragdolled him repeatedly. It was just one of those stellar games. And then the ending is just like, okay, they gave the Chiefs the ball back here. I'm expecting them to go down and score. There's just not a lot of gas. When you play a game like that, you are exhausted. And the fact the defense stepped up, I think it was LaMarcus Joyner that made the game-winning, game-sealing interception. But I'll never forget the Gerald Everett touchdown pass. That was unbelievable. For Gerald Everett, first off, to have the wherewithal to stay in bounds down the sideline. And then Jared Goff, just the poise in the pocket to throw that and just look like a total baller doing it. I do miss those days with Goff because, man, that was – and, after that, you had to be feeling like he was going to be the quarterback for the next 10 years and retire as the best quarterback in Rams history.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that was I sometimes, like, when I've had a bad day, I just go to YouTube and I, like, rewatch the highlights for that game.
I just did yesterday, actually.
Yeah. Oh, so funny. Yeah, there are lots of other, like, great Rams games, though, but for sure that one, like, there's a special spot. And even, like, people forget about the context behind that game of, like, it was supposed to be played in Mexico, but then there was field issues. So then, like, the Rams were in Denver.
They had Shakira, right?
Yeah.
And Shakira ruined the whole stadium.
Yeah. And, like, there was wildfires going on, and, like, some of the Rams players couldn't even go back to their homes. Like, there was so much going on. And then, to come and put on that game for the city of LA and for, football fans as a whole, it was just, such a blessing for sure.
The craziest thing, and I agree with you, but the craziest thing is, as Imoni M in the comments brought up, and also hello, Aiden Too Cool, that is my guy right there. He brought up that never forget when Goff went off against the Vikings the same year.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen a better quarterback performance than the one Goff played against the Vikings that year. And this is why it's so weird for me. Earlier when we're talking about Henderson, I say, well, if Goff could connect with him, because it's just like, if you went back in time and you told me in 2018 after that Vikings game that Jared Goff was going to fall off a cliff, I wouldn't have believed you because it just didn't seem possible. I mean, that Vikings game, he pitched essentially a perfect game, in baseball terms. Mm-hmm. He was unbelievable. He had 158.3 passer rating, which is the maximum you can have. It is the best. He had 4 touchdowns. He went toe-to-toe with Kirk Cousins on, I believe, Thursday Night Football. So on a short week, we're getting this incredible performance out of him. And he made one of the best throws I've ever seen. Go back to the throw. They're in the shotgun. I think they have Gurley in motion going to the left. He fakes the handoff and then rolls out to the right. And he delivers the most perfect strike to Cooper Kupp. It's like the ball is just, it's not even a strike, because it's perfectly placed. There's a ton of air underneath it. It just floats in the end zone, and Kupp barely gets his feet in bounds. It's just one of the most incredible plays you'll see. And there was just a lot of that year. You really felt like they were going to win a Super Bowl that year. It just felt magical. So, yeah, I mean, that exactly, Imoni. Yeah. So it's crazy. It really is. The fact is, I think the Rams-Chiefs game was the best. I think Jared Goff's game was by far the Vikings game because he was just perfect.
For sure. And we'll give a couple of shout outs here. Shot by Nolan, welcome on in. And
my
also
guy.
We got GP Shadow coming on in here. Awesome, man. Elite chat tonight. Elite chat.
There we go.
Jake, thanks for sharing and walking us down a bit of Rams past. I'm going to ask you the question about so we've already talked a lot about the running back situation, Akers, but besides that, we're going to talk Rams present. So this season, what are your thoughts? What game are you most looking forward to? And then after that kind of caveat question is, what's something you really appreciate about our present head coach, Sean McVay?
Oh man, a lot there, Payo. So,
Yeah.
we'll start off. What I appreciate about Sean McVay is that, I mean, this guy, no matter what he was dealt with, he just continues to persevere. They still have not had a losing season. They've been through a lot of injuries. They've been lucky in a sense. They haven't been, the 49ers, but
Yep.
I mean, hey, Cooper Kupp, if they have him in the Super Bowl, I think it's a completely different game, and they've had a couple of those tough breaks. And then you talk about like Todd Gurley. I mean, that was the best offensive player in football, whether people want to admit it or not, in 2017-18. I mean, his touchdowns were unreal. One of the most explosive 2-year, I would say most explosive 2-year stretch I've seen in quite some time. So it's really, disappointing for that. But it's the way Sean McVay bounced back. You look, first off, they go 11-5 with the team, not the exact team, very similar though to the team that Jeff Fisher had at 4-12. Okay, that's first and foremost. Then his second year, they go to the Super Bowl at 13-3. Then the next year, with everything going on, they have all sorts of stuff going on. I mean, you have your secondary. I mean, how many times have you seen a starting secondary get traded away in the middle of the season? I mean, that's just insane. So, you trade away Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib, you bring in Jalen Ramsey, you give a guy like a UDFA that the Ravens probably wish they kept in Darius Williams an opportunity. And I mean, they had a chance at the end of the season. And the funny thing is, guys, everybody in here, whether you realize it or not, that's a playoff team today. They would have been the 7th seed. So, of course, in typical, fashion, being a Rams fan, they introduced the 7 seed the next year, which probably won't affect the Rams for a while because I expect them to be near the top. So, you mentioned the game that I'm most looking forward to, and I think it's the game that's going to decide the NFC number 1 seed, and I think it's between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When you look, defending champions, they're a team that the Rams went into their home and they beat. They turned the ball over on Tom Brady, including the one that got ruled back. That I still don't know how that got ruled back, and that was clearly a fumble. But I'm not going to be hitter in here. I mean, they clearly won the game. So, but I think that's the biggest game of the year for sure. A dark horse game would probably be Green Bay, because Green Bay, they, if Aaron Rodgers plays, which I know we keep saying if, but it's starting to look like he will. If Aaron Rodgers plays for the Green Bay Packers, they're going to be in the thick of things as well. And so then that game becomes very interesting. So I'm very interested to see those two. I think those two would be the best. And then what was your other question? I try to hit on that.
You know what? Maybe I got to get better at asking less questions at the same time.
No, you're good.
But you were talking about, so game most looking forward to. We've talked about McVay. So just general, like, I know you had a prediction of 15-2 for the Rams. Do you stand by that?
Hasn't changed. Okay. Look, Cam Akers he's great prospect, but and I was saying this on my podcast and it pissed some people off, and I'm sorry. I love Cam. I own a jersey. I'm not a hater of his. The fact of the matter is this: I think we pushed him towards superstardom way too quickly. And it's not because he got hurt, and it's not why he got hurt. But I think just the pressure coming into the season for Cam Akers was enormous. I mean, this is a guy that's coming off not only a fluke or just a bizarre injury, to his ribs, his rib cartilage to be exact. I mean, I've never even heard of a football stabbing you in the rib. Like I've never heard that. So not only is he coming off that, and then he's coming off a high ankle sprain, which I'm going to say something here that might be a little ballsy, but I wonder if the high ankle sprain and all the emphasis on the high ankle might have actually led to the Achilles tear. I don't think that's talked about enough. I've discussed it with Blaine over text. I really wonder. I don't know for sure, but it's kind of the same thing with Sam Bradford. And I know before everyone makes their jokes about him being made out of glass, when you get a high ankle sprain or you get some sort of injury, you are rehabbing that injury. You're over compensating for that injury. It can lead to other injuries if you're not careful. That's why you really have to do it all. And so if Cam Akers was overcompensating, that would make sense for the torn Achilles. So that's something to keep in mind. And it's I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. I'm just explaining that that's something that could happen. Now, the hope is that Cam Akers comes back, right? Because I am worried legitimately that he doesn't come back 100%. He's never the same. We saw it with Todd Gurley at the knee. I would have rather had him had a torn ACL. I think, in this day and age, it's easier to come back from a torn ACL than a torn Achilles. I mean, you look at the guys that come back from a torn Achilles, we still haven't seen Marlon Mack yet. And Marlon Mack was a really good running back who now is looking at a third spot on that depth chart potentially. So we don't really know what to expect here, and that is a concern of mine. But I'm sticking with the 15-2 because this offense is going to be so explosive. People are not ready. They're not. Even when you think you're ready, you're just not. I don't even think I'm ready. Okay. I mean, I think Matthew Stafford's going to win MVP. I think that Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp are both going to have double-digit touchdowns. Mm-hmm. I think Van Jefferson's going to have double-digit touchdowns. He may not have the yards, but this is somebody that can win with his footwork, controlled aggression, getting his footwork off the line of scrimmage. I mean, he is one of the best route runners already in the game. Yeah. People don't realize that. He is very elusive, and he's somebody that's going to be able to get open in the red zone. Then you have guys like Higbee, and you have Harris, and you have Bryson Hopkins, who I will just basically throw out there. Bryson Hopkins isn't gone yet. Like, that's a guy I actually interviewed going back to his Senior Bowl year, and he told me straight up when he met with the Rams, they envisioned him and Tyler Higbee as a tandem. They didn't mention Gerald Everett. And so when people were wondering, why are you totally off the Gerald Everett bandwagon? I'm like, I might have gotten a few things out of there where I don't feel confident he'll be back. But I also, suspect Gerald Everett's going to break out in Seattle. So watch out for that. But I just think there's so many weapons there. Stafford really has it all. And then when you look at the defense, even if they take a step back, like people talk about them taking a huge step back, where are they going to go? Like bottom 10, like right now, if you look at like the fantasy football defensive rankings, they're number 1, number 2, or number 3. Like there's still, experts out there that predict this team to still, score plenty in the fantasy football realm. And that, of course, leads to, they're going to be a pretty good defense because you can't be a good fantasy defense and not be a good defense. And with everybody they have, I mean, we still haven't seen a Jalen Ramsey type of year where like he can take over and, pick passes off. I mean, he gets about 1 or 2 because teams don't want to throw near him. Here we are, another season with Darius Williams. Soon you're not even going to want to throw near Darius Williams. So you're going to have to throw at, both of them. And so I think it opens up everything there for the defense. I think the pass rush will be a lot better because here's the thing. Okay. Leonard Floyd is kind of proven himself that, he can get to the quarterback and he can finish. And that was a big thing. When Aaron Donald is creating opportunities, go and get the quarterback. I don't want to see you whiff it. And you can't. Donald can whiff because what he's doing when he whiffs is he's still getting a hand on them and redirecting them into a would-be sack. But you got to make that play. That's something Leonard Floyd did last year. I think he has a better season this year, but I'm curious to see who takes over on the other side. Justin Hollins, who to me, he's got an incredible athletic profile, but for whatever reason, he hasn't really developed the way I expected as a pass rusher. I mean, he was the East-West Shrine Game MVP coming out of college, and he's turned more into a cover guy. So that's why he was playing inside backer a little bit. That experiment was going on with Vic Fangio and Brandon Staley in Denver, and kind of transferred over to the Rams a little bit. He does play a little inside, but then you have guys like Okoronkwo, where it's like, where's he going to be? I think he's now 27. So it's either now or never with him. So we'll see with him. Terrell Lewis, if he can stay healthy, you have to his potential, but I'm not confident he can. So what does that leave? Well, it leaves guys like, a Max Roberts that maybe people need to start talking about at Boston College. I like him a lot. I think he is a sleeper to make the roster. I don't necessarily think he will. I think they'll keep him on the practice squad, though. Definitely a guy I'd be looking at, Maximilian Roberts. I also really like Chris Garrett at a D2. Now, it's going to take him a little bit. I think they're going to go with the slow approach with him, not going to throw him in early on. But maybe in the long run, he could end up being a pretty solid pass rusher. But the interesting thing here is Ernest Brown the fourth, because, Ernest Brown, I keep hearing just great things from sources that tell me, look, this guy they really, really like. They're really high on. I don't think people realize how high they're on, with him. He ended up grading in my top 10, in my my SI guide that I'm coming out with, Draft Bible. So that is something to keep in mind. That's a guy that can play, putting his hand in the dirt as a defensive end, or, he can actually rush the passer standing up. He is going to need some work, but he can do both. So that'll be interesting. A guy that, could replace the Morgan Fox type role. And then another guy I'll throw out there is Eric Banks, from UTSA. I mean, Eric Banks, look, he has, familiarity with Eric Henderson, the defensive lines coach. So that's going back to college. He coached him. That's going to be somebody that I look at as well. But I mean, when you have the ability that you have out of, a Troy Reader that can blitz, he hit 3 in a game, last year against Washington. I think that's going to be utilized. I think you're going to use Taylor Rapp in some situations, Burgess, Fuller. They're going to get creative here. I mean, this is Raheem Morris's defense. I think it'll be similar to last year. Might look similar, but I think they're going to do some different things. And so, I don't expect the defense to take a major step forward because they were number 1 last year, but I don't see them to take a step back the way, other people have them taking. So, I mean, I'll just say this, 15-2 is not out of the realm of possibility. And even if the Rams decide to sit Matthew Stafford and company for week 17, this depth, and likely if they do, that means that the Ravens would also, this depth I'm not worried about. And I'll take it further and say they make the playoffs even if like Stafford were to go down. I trust them with John Wolford. This is a good football team, even with Wolford. But with Stafford, they are a favorite. And right now it's them, the Buccaneers, and I mean, obviously you got to put the Chiefs up there, but I would also say, the Chargers. I had the Rams and Chargers in the Super Bowl for that reason. So,
no, hey, Jake Cole, there's so much you can take. Love the Rams wisdom coming out of your mouth. It's awesome. I can tell the chat's enjoying it. We're gonna give a shout out here to Rams House TV. What's good? Glad you're here. Travis Rich is also in the house. This is an awesome elite chat. We got Matt Warren's here. Awesome. Mike Anderson's coming on in. How many sacks did Reader have in the other 15 games?
Off the top of my head, I do not know.
Yeah,
but I'm assuming you're dogging me right now.
Yeah. Well, Jake, so we've talked about the Rams past, the Rams present. I want to talk about the Rams future, and I have 2 questions here for you. So I'll do a better job of interviewing you and ask one question at a time. The first question is, what's one player you are excited about 2 to 3 years from now that the Rams have in their building?
Oh, man. I love this question, but you're only giving me one player. Oh, Lord.
I'll let you do 1A and 1B if you need to.
I might have to because, I mean, the first thought that popped into my mind it instantly was Jacob Harris. I mean, when you look at that athletic profile, that compares very similarly to Calvin Johnson. I mean, we know the video I put out on that.
Great video, yeah.
Thank you. I mean, like he might produce this year. You give him 3 years, this could be a top 5 tight end in football. And, I want to say this. Jacob Harris doesn't have to be Calvin Johnson to pan out. Jacob Harris doesn't even have to be, George Kittle or Tyler Higbee. He can be like a guy that I don't think is being compared to enough that maybe Mr. Copycat Sean McVay. And hey, if you're not copying, you're not trying in this league. What if they drafted Jacob Harris not to be Calvin Johnson, but to be Darren Waller? Because Darren Waller, in my opinion, is kind of just a flex tight end where mainly he's a former receiver. I mean, like, you know what I mean? So he transferred from receiver to tight end, and it's almost like a new type of role, right? You keep a tight end, a little bit more light in the pants and, be able to, move better. And so then in that 2 tight end personnel, you can throw another tight end there who's actually, fits the bill, and then you're good. And so, 3 years from now, I see Jacob Harris, they're going to keep him slimmed down and keep him, because, I mean, I think he's similar to Mike Evans in a sense, but he's faster, way faster. So I think they'll keep him slimmed down, maybe a big slot, maybe a flex. They might use him a little bit like I expect the Falcons might use Pitts. But a guy like Bryson Hopkins, make no mistake about it, they're going to try to mold him into a tight end like Tyler Higbee that can do a little bit of both. And, it's a little bit of a surprise there because you look at Bryson Hopkins and you think, oh, that guy was mainly a receiving tight end. Wasn't the greatest blocker in college, but he was still my number one tight end in the draft. Rams got in the 4th round. They didn't draft him for no reason, so don't write him off yet. So the 1A would be Jacob Harris. The 1B comes from the same draft, and it is going to be Robert Rochelle. Because if Rochelle ends up panning out the way I think he can, he will be a top 10 corner in football. Because if the Rams can develop him, he's just got these rare traits about him that other corners don't. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the athletic profile there, it's just not very it's just not very common to have a guy with that long of, an arm span or, wingspan, and a guy that can run that fast and have the height. So he's a little bit of a freak, and I'll throw a bonus one for you. Don't forget about Van Jefferson. There's people writing him off pretty quickly here, drafting, Deshaun Jackson in fantasy before him. Don't write off Van Jefferson, man. And 3 years from now, absolutely do not. I think at worst, Van Jefferson is Robert Woods esque in 3 years. At best, though, I think he's like Keenan Allen with that footwork. I think it's only going to get better. His route running. I mean, he comes from a family, his father played in the NFL, has that bloodline. Sean Jefferson obviously taught him the ropes early on because he was just so much more advanced as a route runner than anyone else in that draft. So those guys typically get better. And Payo, if you're ever, you're trying to scout a wide receiver, I'll just say this. By the way, El Pineapples mentioned Tremaine Ankrum. That's my guy. I expect him to be the left tackle after Whitworth. Call me crazy. And if I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong. But anyway, one thing when scouting a receiver that I've completely changed my scouting approach on receivers. Okay. Look at Nikhil Harry. Nikhil Harry had all, the glitz and glamour, the way he was able to move at Minnesota, right? Like all the, the trick plays, the college highlights. This is why you got to watch all 22. You got to watch the full film to see it all. But he was fun to watch. A lot of people liked watching him. I had a bad feeling about him because he couldn't separate.
Yeah.
So I elaborated more on that feeling. And sure enough, the biggest issue in the NFL is that he can't separate and he's having a hard time making contested catches. So when scouting a wide receiver, if you want to know if he's going to translate to the NFL or not, well, I hate to break it to you, but there's no way you're going to know for sure. However, there's a way that you'll have an idea, a good idea. And so at the end of the day, if you want to find a receiver that you think projects well long-term and can succeed at the NFL level, you need to find a guy that can create separation. Because if he cannot separate, I don't care if he's, he runs a 4.3. I don't care if the guy's 6'8". I don't care if, his hands are amazing. I immediately throw a red flag if the guy cannot separate, because that tells me he cannot run routes. Keenan Allen is not the fastest receiver in the league, but watch his yards of separation. Gerald Everett, he was not the fastest tight end in that draft, but Gerald Everett had more yards separation than any tight end last year. You probably didn't know that because Jared Goff didn't exactly take advantage of that. So, that if you can't separate, you can't succeed in this league because it's already hard enough. If you can't separate in college, buddy, it gets way harder at the next level. I mean, just think about this. If you can't separate from the 4th string cornerback on another team, what you're doing in college, because he's now 4th or 5th string cornerback on another team in the NFL, or not even in the NFL. If you can't separate from him, how can you go against Jalen Ramsey and Jair Alexander, guys that are actually stifling the elite of the elite? You can't. So that's a big thing for me, and that's a good barometer. And for me, I look at Jacob Harris, and I think he can. I look at Van Jefferson. I know he can. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, they separate, and I'd even say Ben Skoranek, he's going to take some time, but watch out for him. So I kind of gave you all sorts of stuff there, but
that's great. And it leads me into our next question about the Rams' future. And It has to do with the Rams draft strategy, which obviously gets highly criticized. Our next first round draft pick isn't till 2024. And do you like this, strategy going forward? Are you hoping that as soon as a player becomes available, Snead, trades more future first round picks to get more proven talent on this roster? And do you think this is a sustainable model with the draft?
A great question, Payo. There's no really way to know because they're kind of the first team embarking on this journey. I mean, when you really think about who's doing what they're doing, that is why they're constantly connected to Julio Jones, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they're never going to stop getting connected to those because, Les Snead is the only one that shows a backbone to do those moves. Yeah. So I would say this. I love the draft just as much as anyone. And I put in the work here. I mean, I love the draft. I love watching film. But I got to be unbiased when I say I think the Rams have found something that works for them and that I don't think it's a horrible model. I think it actually is sustainable, and here's why. Because when you have the scouting department you have that's consistently churning out guys either in the late end of the draft, like a Sebastian Joseph Day or, a Jordan Fuller, or you're talking about UDFAs, guys like Malcolm Brown, who you signed as a UDFA in 2015 out of Texas, and he's on your roster in 2020, or, a Rodney McLeod going back a few years, or, a Corey Littleton, who ends up being nearly a captain for your defense and ends up being one of the better linebackers in football while he's with you. See, when you can do that, you have the flexibility to really do what you want. And I think the furthermore here is that cap space is so hard to come by. And when you have a legit quarterback that you've already paid, Stafford's already paid. So the good thing is, and this is the thing that kind of goes without saying, is that when Jared Goff was a rookie quarterback, they were able to make all these crazy, dream team type of splashes. But when you have to pay your guy, you have to get more creative. And that's why when they paid Jared Goff, they wanted to get a Kenny Young. I know for a fact because they wanted to get a cheap linebacker that they had 2 to 3 years of control over. Whether he starts or not, that helps because you don't have a lot to work with. You have to get creative. So them picking up Darius Williams, seeing that the Ravens dropped him and we're trying to sneak him back on the practice squad so they could add Jimmy Smith to the active roster, the Rams are like, oh, there's an opportunity. We'll take that. Marquis Christian will take that. They've done that. And so when you don't pick in the first round, this is what happens. You actually get about $5 to $6 million that is not used, is not withheld in cap space because you're not paying a first round salary. You're not paying the first round market scale. And so that's the drawback to picking in the first round, because if you are really just basically right against the cap there, then you don't have, like, if you could trade away your first round pick, get assets next year, and you think, no, we'll have more cap space next year, do it, because then you can get more picks next year. Maybe you get a player on like a really cheap deal that you can work with, and there you go. But I don't think that their model is entirely the wrong way to build a team, because I think they're just doing it differently. They're doing things differently. That's been, the Rams mantra. When you look at their roster, they have the two best players at their positions on two important parts of a defense. Cornerback, which is really hard to come by. The Rams have never had a corner like Jalen Ramsey. They've had guys. I mean, you could argue Marcus Peters was up there. Aqib Talib, if they had him in his prime, maybe.
Finnegan.
But, Finnegan, if you had him in his prime, maybe. But, I mean, Jalen Ramsey is the best corner they've had since, Dick Lane. I mean, let's just call it like it is. They had Night Train Lane. He had about 14 interception in a season, and then they traded him to the Lions, I believe. So, I don't really know why they did that. But, I mean, I think by far he'd be the best corner they've had since Night Train Lane. And then, I mean, with Aaron Donald, they've had just a incredible amount of talent on the defensive line. You could go through it all. I mean, the fearsome foursome, a guy that's never brought up that I'm going to give his due, the late, great Coy Bacon. who had 130 plus unofficial sacks and potentially tied Deacon Jones's unofficial 26 sack record in a season when he was with Washington. But my point is that the Rams had these like generational talents. They have Matthew Stafford, who is the best deep ball quarterback according to accuracy output in the league over the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And people are worried that Akers getting hurt is going to derail this entire team. It's like, I hate it for Akers, but I really don't feel like this is the Rams offense. I really don't feel like is going to miss a beat. And so I just look at this team and I think what they're doing right now, they're doing it the right way. I may disagree with their picks. I may say over and over again they should have drafted Baron Browning over Ernest Jones because they probably should have. And Nolan makes a great point here. It's more minds in the scouting department than Brad Holmes. I know people initially were like, what if it was all Brad Holmes because the draft looked a little weird? And I'll admit, picking Tutu Atwell in the second round when Terrace Marshall was there was a little bit of a head scratcher to me. Yeah. But they have their own methods here. And one thing that I can't stress enough is we look too much, and I know I'm guilty of this, we look too much at the measurables, and we don't give some of these guys enough credit how they play in pads. And, I see that with Taylor Rapp. I mean, he's a lot more explosive of a player than he is as a runner. Like, all we know from his pro day is that, man, this guy is not good at running a 40-yard time in, compression shorts. But when he puts on the pads, he moves well. So there are a lot of guys like that the Rams find. And another guy you could mention is Jordan Fuller, who ran about a 4.6, 4.7. People are like, oh, he's not fast. Why would you draft a not fast safety? And here he is, and he's arguably a top 10 Ram right now on the roster. So I think what they're doing is the right way. But keep in mind, Payo, and everybody out there, you can do this as long as, like I said, you continue to find those UDFAs. You continue to find those late round picks. So the Rams have shown us that they have found it last year. Did they find it this year? We'll see. But they got to keep that up, because if they don't keep that up, then it's not sustainable. But as long as they do, basically this is just the really, really stressful way to live your life. Instead of going with the long game, you play the stock market, you go with the long game, you're just day trading. And that's essentially what the Rams are doing. They're day trading, but they're day trading with literally just that is all they have to their name. So once they run out of those funds, they are in a, that type of word, screwed. So we'll see. I think it's sustainable because I don't think that, their scouting department is just going to fold overnight. When you have a guy like Sean McVay, who's shown people will actually be, worried about, oh, well, Sean McVay is losing all these people, so he's probably really hard to work with. Or you could look at the positive side of that, and you could look at, wow, Sean McVay loses somebody, but that's honestly Sean McVay giving them an opportunity. So he's building their portfolio up to go and get another job. That's a promotion. And he has no issue finding another guy because everybody wants to be on Sean McVay's coaching staff. So how could you look at that negatively? So that's what I'll say there.
That's a fantastic point. I had never thought about that. But like our coaching staff always gets gutted every year, it seems, in the McVay era. And I think you're totally right. That's why my only first off, I love this draft strategy. I think it's fun from a fan perspective. Like the Ramley is blessed with these trades. We have all these star players that come in, things like that. The concern though, is this aggressive draft, strategy combined with the amount of dead cap hits that the Rams have, currently on their books. And so I'm really curious to see, hopefully, Snead has learned about these contracts that he seems so quick to give out that, maybe we won't have as much dead cap in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's something there. I mean, I think it goes back. I mean, I don't know if it's Snead. I don't know if it's Pastors. I don't know who it is. But they've been giving out contracts like candy. I mean, when you go back, Brockers had, I think, 3 of them. Tavon Austin had one. And I mean, man, I just gotta say, Tavon Austin is an absolute pros pro, as Sean McVay would call him, off the field.
Yeah.
I really want him to succeed. And part of me still wonders if he could have, and they just kind of gave up on him.
Yeah.
Because I don't know necessarily what Tutu brings that Tavon, didn't bring. Which is honestly a good thing about Tutu Atwell, is that I think, he has a lot of the explosive traits that Tavon had. I think he's probably a better receiver than giving credit for. Not, Gadget is probably his role moving forward, in the near future, but that's not his long-term future. But yeah, you had guys like Austin, you had guys like Ogletree, but what is happening with all these guys? I mean, Austin gets kind of kicked out of the starting lineup and then really just doesn't do anything, and then they get rid of him. You sign Alec Ogletree, and then I think 5 months later you trade him in the Giants. So I mean, that was the first signing of the Les Snead Sean McVay era, and Les Snead drafted him. So it's a little weird how quickly they give out contracts. And it was really funny when they gave out the Higbee contract. I defended it. And then we get Higbee in 2019 at the end of the season down the stretch, and he looks so good. I mean, he looks like he was turning into a top 5 tight end. So then he comes in the league in 2020. And, first game, he didn't really have much there. The second game against Philly, he catches 3 touchdowns, and you're thinking, oh, okay.
He's back.
So baby Gronk is actually baby Gronk. Like, that wasn't. And then unfortunately, he suffers an injury. So it'll be interesting to see how he's used, how things go with him. But that's the thing for them. They do sign contracts. They sign guys early. They wanted to sign Jared Goff, and I know this, they wanted to sign Jared Goff before Dak Prescott got paid. The problem with that is that Dak Prescott literally just got paid. Yeah. So, it kind of goes to show you they paid Goff way too early. Mm-hmm. You could argue they paid Todd Gurley a little too early, but I don't think that's fair. I think that's hindsight in 2020. Yeah. Because here's the thing with Todd Gurley, you have to keep in mind he was the best offensive player in football and wasn't close. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to hate on them for picking him up and extending him. The Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp deals I liked, but some people did not. I mean, they're just really quick to give out contracts. I mean, I think that, it's a little bit of a pain. And I mean, I'm honestly shocked by the nines that Havenstein is still there, because I thought for sure he was a trade candidate with all of the draft capital they've put in. Bobby Evans, Noteboom, Demby. I mean, I'm not saying Demby has turned into anything, but they did put draft capital into him. Ankrum, Edwards, so Allen. So yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised by that, but I just think that's something that they're probably just going to have to learn from their mistakes, and hopefully they do. And hopefully, the cook or hopefully the contracts turn out well. I was reading someone's comment while I was talking. Anytime I do that, it throws me off. But I will say this, the Cooks contract was not bad, because Brandon Cooks is one of the most, and you would never know this, Brandon Cooks is one of the most consistent receivers the NFL has seen in quite some time. Mm-hmm. He literally went to 3 different areas and went over 1,000 yards. And then the Rams traded him. And mind you, they didn't trade him because of the concussions. They traded him because Jared Goff couldn't hit him anymore. Yep. So he went to Houston, and he goes over 1,000 yards in Houston. So this guy is just everywhere he goes over 1,000 yards, as long as he doesn't get hurt or, held back in a big way. So he's a super consistent player. And I think part of me, is kind of like, I wonder if the Rams kind of want him back in a sense. Like, I'm not saying that they would, but if he was like available tomorrow, I think that'd be really interesting, because I think they really did like him. Now, Cooks wouldn't come back because he's had some choice words that he will keep kind of to himself. But he's definitely had some choice words about that organization for sure. I mean, look, the Rams have kind of not been on the great side of things, with Gurley and Clay Matthews, and Brandon Cooks. So those are 3 guys that spoke out. You never want to see that, but we don't know the story. We don't know what happened, but
there's so much to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of layers. It's a lasagna.
Yeah, but I don't know. At the same time, I think that the Rams, if you compare them to some of the other organizations, they do treat their players well.
I do too, and I don't think it's really anything against the Rams when I bring that up. It's more so, what we know is that Todd Gurley and Clay Matthews were pissed, and I mean Clay Matthews, it could have been, that was his last contract, so he hasn't been in the NFL since. So that could be some sour grapes there. Not trying to hate on him. I like Clay. He had a great career. And then Todd Gurley, he signs the Falcons. So I don't know necessarily what that was. It seemed to me like they just never paid him. So that was the big issue. Brandon Cooks, I'm really wondering, because there were times where I think it was known he had a concussion in a game and they put him back in.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know if that was it, but he was just not happy with them after the fact. And he said someday it'll all come out. So hopefully there's not a 30 for 30 and all these, hopefully there's a 30 for 30 about how the Rams won 4 Super Bowls in a row with Stafford.
That's the dream. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the closest thing we have coming up for a 30 for 30 with the Rams is the Kurt Warner movie. So
yeah. You excited for that? Because I definitely am.
I'm stoked. I'm going opening night. I'm Avengers level. I know you're an MCU guy.
Yes, I am.
I am Avengers level hyped for that movie.
I dig it. I'm very hyped. Kurt told us a little bit about the movie. He told us Zachary Levi was gonna be the guy, or Zachary Levi. I don't know how to pronounce his name. But speaking of the MCU, he's not in the MCU. But he's a superhero. He's actually Shazam. So I thought he did, that movie was not what I expected, because I thought it was going to be horrible. And it ended up being pretty good. I think a lot of that was because, Zach and what he did. But he is a pretty good casting call for Kurt Warner. And Anna Paquin from
Rogue.
Rogue from X-Men. She looks kind of like Brenda Warner, back in the day. So I think they did a nice job with the casting. I've never looked at Dennis Quaid and be like, Dick Vermeil, but
You know what? After I saw that behind the scenes footage and I saw Dennis Quaid as Dick Vermeil, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, all right. I'll just go with it. Yeah. I mean, it's a little cheesy, the welcome to the Rams. I don't know if he ever said that. Yeah. I'll have to ask Dick next time he comes on our show, but but what I'll say in regards to that, because I did a video on that, when people hate on the movie and they say it looks really corny, hello, his story sounds really corny.
It sounds fake.
It's true. What do you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The most Hollywood thing ever, but it actually happened to him, right? That's
exactly. It's I really like that they have the Iowa Barnstormers footage. I'm looking forward to that. I never got to see him play for the Iowa Barnstormers. I only saw him the Rams. I like they have the actual likeness for the players, because you can see the Bruce on the back. You can see Azakim. You can see Ray Lewis when they're playing the Ravens. You can see Javon Curse. I mean, you can see all of them. And that's what I like. I also like they got the permission, of course, from the Green Bay Packers to have their logo, on top of that camp, because he was in camp with Brett Favre and he didn't end up making that roster. And I mean, it's funny because, if he made that roster, things would have been a little different. But what's even more funny, and I brought this up to him, he could have been drafted. And this is perfect. This is perfect timing, because last night we had an expansion draft in the NHL. Now, did you know, Payo, that the Browns had an expansion draft and they could have taken Kurt Warner?
Yeah.
and he's and can you imagine? I mean, there's an alternate reality out there for anyone that knows about the multiverse in the MCU. There's an alternate reality where Kurt Warner is somewhere who played for the Browns and led them to the Super Bowl.
The Kurt Warner variant.
The Kurt Warner variant. Yes, my guy.
Oh man, that's crazy. Oh man. Well, Jake, this has been a blast. I
Absolutely.
thank you so much for coming on. And if you are somehow subscribed to my channel and you're not subscribed to Jake, his channel is in the description below. Make sure you go over, check out his content. Some of the best Rams content on the tube. And yeah, Jake, I'm excited for your future. I know you're getting close to, I think, 6,000 subs.
We're almost there. Yeah.
Exciting.
I want to say 5,900 right now, or close to that.
That's awesome. I think I was one of your subscribers that got picked up by your John Wolford video last fall.
Yes.
I'm one that came in on that wave. So I'm a proud subscriber to your channel.
Appreciate it, man.
Excited to see what content you got coming up, especially when the season gets started. Yeah, do you have anything else to say to people watching today?
Yeah, I love every single one of you. I appreciate all of you. Even if you don't sub to my channel, I appreciate you watching our show today. And what I'll say and what I'll tease is that I will be doing watch parties during all the preseason games for the Rams on my channel. So if you guys want to come over to my channel anytime the Rams are playing on preseason, I'm going to have the game up. I will be watching it. But I will also be interacting with you guys, answering questions, reacting. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. I can't do it throughout the whole year because of the way I watch games. I watch them with my family. It's a sacred time during the year. But after each game, I will have I'll have a pregame show and then I'll have a postgame show. We'll have plenty of videos breaking down the matchups each week. We'll have players to watch, matchups, things along that nature. Just going to do a bunch of really fun stuff on the channel. And if you like the MCU, I'm going to be covering all the MCU stuff. What If is next in August. So I'll be covering that, as well as, the Spider-Man movie, Eternals, all of that. And I'm going to be doing some horror movie content if you like that. I'll be ranking my favorite movies in order from, the series. So, I'm going to go through each series, like the Halloween series, the Saw series. I've rewatched them all. I've ranked them all. So I'm going to be doing videos on those. But my channel's a little bit of everything, but I think the best way, I think it was Nolan that said it, it's about 75 to 80% Rams. And so if you're cool with that, then you'll like my channel.
That's awesome. Well, Jake, I've learned so much from you, not just this stream, but in other content. And I'm sure the people watching have enjoyed your wealth of knowledge in regard to the Rams and the MCU as well.
Appreciate that, man.
But yeah, we're going to end this stream here, guys. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we're going to say Payo time and Jake. Peace and out.
Later, guys.